All right, for the domain and range retest review, you are going to tell me the symbol form and the verbal description for every single part, okay, for every single question, okay? So the domain, okay, remember, is left to right. So I'm going to go to the furthest left point, and I'm going to follow it to the x-axis, okay? So that means it starts at 1. Okay, my inequalities always face the same way, and x goes in the middle. And then I go to my furthest right point, but it's an arrow, meaning it's going to start at 1 and it's going to keep going forever to the direction of right. So that means that reaches to infinity. So when we have one of our sides being infinity, we do not usually put the infinity sign. We just say it's either greater than or less than the number that it starts at. Okay? So because x is on the right hand side, we want x to be on the left, so it'd be x is greater than 1, and it's just greater than because I have an open point. Okay, so how I would write that in words is it's all real numbers greater than 1. My range, remember, is bottom to top. Okay, so I'm going to go to the bottom, but the bottom of my graph is an arrow. So meaning because the starting point is an arrow, I'm going to have negative infinity. Y goes in the middle. Inequalities always face the same way. And then I go to the top of the graph and follow it to the y-axis, and it ends at 9. Because it intersects, it doesn't intersect, but because it is a line, it is equal to. Okay, so again, I don't necessarily write the infinity part. I just write this part of the statement with a number. So I would write that as all real numbers greater, not greater than, that's a less than sign. So this is a less than sign in perspective of the y. So less than or equal to 9. All right, domain here, left to right. So I go to the furthest left point, follow it to the x-axis. It starts at -7. Inequalities face the same way. And this one actually has an endpoint, but I need to make sure I follow it to the x-axis. So that is not -3 at which it ends. It is actually at 0 on the x-axis. So because that is a closed point, I get an equal to sign there. So when I write this statement, it is always all real numbers but when we write this statement, we need to make sure we're putting it in perspective of the variable. So this is a greater than sign perspective to the variable. So greater than -7, and this is a less than or equal to sign in perspective of the x. So in less than or equal to 0. My range is bottom to top, so I go to the bottom, and now that starts at -3. Inequalities face the same way. Because that's a closed point, I get an equal to sign. I go to the top, follow it to the y-axis, it's at 4. Because that's an open point, I leave it as a less than sign. So how I would write this is all real numbers greater than or equal to -3 and less than 4. So when there's a beginning and an end, you always say greater than first, and then less than comes last. Okay, because it's always going to be greater than the smallest number, but less than the bigger number. Okay, and just make sure you put the equal to part in if you have to. All right, so on this one, there is going to be a beginning and an end. Okay, so our domain is left to right. So my left side wall, my right side wall, so -3 X goes in the middle. 1. Because 1 is close, I'm going to use an equal to sign there. So it's all real numbers. Numbers greater than -3 and less than or equal to -1. My range, remember, is bottom to top. So I go to the bottom of the graph and it's even with -4. Go to the top of the graph, it's even to 0. So it'd be -4 inequalities to 0. So because there's a line at both 0 and the -4, we both get equal to signs. Okay, and I understand that there's an open point here, but if one part of the graph is equal to, then you have to put an equal to sign. Okay, so again, it's all real numbers greater than or equal to -4 and less than or equal to 0. All right, this part of domain and range is discrete. So because this is discrete, we just list out our ordered pairs and then split up the domain and range. Okay, so my ordered pairs are 0, 0. Then I have 1, 10, 2, 20, 3, 30. I see the trend here. 4, 40, 5, 50, 6, 60, 7, 70, 8, 80, 9, 90, and 10, 100. Okay, so remember my domain are all of my first numbers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you write those in brackets. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you always want to do it least to greatest. My range are all my second numbers. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay. So if it's discrete, remember you just list it out. Okay. All right. So my domain here, it's continuous. So I've got to use interval notation again. Okay. So I go to my furthest left point, but my furthest left point is an arrow. So it means it's going to keep going that direction. I go to my furthest right, but it is also an arrow. So when I have -infinity to infinity, then my domain is just all real numbers. So and the symbol for that is this double-legged R. Okay, my range is bottom to top. So I go to my bottom and it's at 1. Inequalities face the same way. But then I go to my top and it is arrows. So meaning it's going to reach infinity. Okay. We're going to use an equal to sign with the 1 because it's a line hitting the 1. Okay. Even to the 1. So again, we don't write the infinity part. What we're going to do is rewrite it where y comes first and make sure you flip the inequality when you do that. So it's all real numbers greater than or equal to 1. All right. So again, this is discrete. So I'm going to list out all of my ordered pairs. Okay, remember discrete means there's no line connecting my data. So when it's discrete, I'm going to list out all of my ordered pairs. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 2, comma 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, comma 2. So when I list out my domain, remember my domain are all my first numbers in numerical order, so 1, 2, and 4. If you have repeats like we do here, because this one's not a function, okay, remember you just have to list it once. And then my range are all of my y values, so 1, 2, 3, and 5. That's all my second numbers. All right, hope this helps. Bye, guys.